I was just trying to tell him, oh, like we're nominated for an award. And he's like, I hope you win, Dad. And I was like, well, if you don't win, like it's okay. Like, cause he's all about winning right now.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Anyway, but so I hope that I'll just tell him whatever happens, or just blame it on the fortunate ones if they
really start off, welcome to the podcast, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Like, tell me a little bit about how this band formed, because I know I did a little bit of research. I tell people I know a little bit about them, not everything, because if I know everything, why are we here? But I did a little bit of research and I found out, like, at 14, you really, like, you dabbled in different instruments, but at 14, you were kind of starting your whole musical career with a couple of, like, your siblings, cousins. I kind of refer to you almost like a Jimmy Rankin in a way, because it's like, yeah, you're doing the band thing with the family, and it's like, all right, Jimmy's got that covered. What are you doing, Tim?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess, I grew up like many families on the East Coast, just playing music with my siblings and cousins, and with no intention of, it was just how a lot of people, it's part of the culture. As you know, like in Atlantic, Canada. And it's just kind of in the blood. And my older brothers, like going way back, my older brothers played in cover bands and Celtic bands. And I just really looked up to them. And I remember they asked me to play bass in that band, which was like a Celtic rock band, when I was about 14. So that's when my first taste of like actually playing shows and going on tour, like across Canada, and stuff like that happened. And then I started, whenever they kind of stopped playing, I dabbled in a solo kind of like singer-songwriter stuff. And that's where my true like passion and love was writing songs. And I did that for a number of years until, Koady and Jake and I just kind of, I guess organically were like, oh, we should just, we were hanging out, drinking beers, playing tunes, and no intention of doing anything, really just wanted to have fun. And and that's kind of when the East Pointers formed in about 2014, I guess. Just out of sheer, like, we enjoyed each other's company. Obviously Koady and I are first cousins, and Jake was a really good buddy. And then we had this opportunity to go on a tour shortly after we formed, to go to Australia. And I had been to Australia like as a solo artist before, but when we got there that time, it was like, oh, maybe we should do this more often. And then we began to take it more serious. And then that first album that we made got nominated for Juno, and we were like, what the hell? It won a Juno. And then we, from there on out, we kind of, took it obviously much more serious and toured a lot.
So I want to ask you to kind of go off that, because I mean, a little bit of the fun aspect and a little bit of like kind of teasing, but like, you win it in 2017. Like it's almost like in hockey when it's like Rookie of the Year. You win Rookie of the Year, there's high expectations. But like the next year when you get nominated and you like don't win, now I don't mean it to be like ruffling feathers, but like, are you kind of like, what we won it last year? Like how did we not winning this anymore? Like, what's going on? Like, I know there's more people coming up, but do you ever like make fun of yourselves where you're just like, we won it? Sure. And how are we not here?
I think it's, the award shows that's a whole other can of worms. Like, it's just it's a funny concept to like judge someone who's a completely different thing than what you, anyway, blah, blah, blah. But it's,
you want to protect yourself because you are nominated again. And then you got six, like, you got so many nominations again this year.
That's right. Yeah. But we, the next year we didn't win, which is okay. but we're actually, we're heading to the Junos next weekend, which is cool. And I'm excited that actually our good buddies of ours, the Fortunate Ones, which is obviously they're from your neck of the woods.
Oh yeah.
They're nominated in the same category, which is kind of cool. And I'm actually just looking forward to the thing about, like, I think we're the only two, I could be wrong, but I feel like we're the only two East Coast bands that are going to be at the Junos this year. So it's kind of like, you go into those situations, like, and it just, we're just going to hang out, have fun for the weekend.
And of course, in typical Juno fashion, they have you nominated against each other, where it's almost like no, we can't have these East Coasters teaming up against the rest of the world here. We need these guys like going neck and neck. I would laugh at where there's like in catering or like behind the scenes where it's like, you know, like, how do you feel about those crowd winning the awards? Like, love them. But then as soon as the cameras come off, motherfuck, how do like why?
Yeah. I don't think any of us take it too seriously, but it is kind of cool. Like, I mean, I know I'm kind of acting like it's not anything, but it is cool to just be like, even like Blackie and the Rodeo Kings, and I can't even remember who else is in the category, but there's lots of great bands that are going to be around, and it's just cool that we're in their company.
I want to ask you, like, I know you were talking about how you formed, but who came up with the name the East Pointers? Because I feel like there's someone in Newfoundland right now going, I had that trademarked for my band.
Yeah, well, you know what? There was, like I say, there wasn't much thought that went into like the East Point is just like close to where Koady and I had grown up. So we, and actually Koady fished. He was a lobster fisherman for a bunch of years, and my brother and his brother, they're all on the East Point in the North Lake. That's where they all fished at and still do. But yeah, so we were like, I think it was just one night where we're like, oh, the East Pointers, that could be kind of a cool name. And that was it. That was the only conversation that was had. And that was, like I said, before we were going to take it seriously. So it just turned into that. And that's what it was. There was no real thought, to be honest.
I feel like there should be like some merchandise where it's just literally like at the very east point of a t-shirt, you literally just have a point, and someone's just going to be like, I don't understand it, but like your hardcore fan base,
they
will be like, yeah, it's like, we get it. See, I'm helping you market.
Yeah, totally. That's a good idea.
Yeah, like that's how you figure out which are your hardcore fans and which fans are just kind of like, yeah, like I like them, but I don't really know much about them. Like, who's that? It's like, that's actually the lead singer. They'll be like, oh, yeah, totally, do that.
Good call.
Yeah,
the Eastern, you got it.
Just mark it up, figure it out. I want to ask you, because I like to tell people how I kind of found out about them, or like, you know, because you always get these stories, especially now with like Instagram, the social media side, where you can always check out a tweet and it's a fan who's like, you know, went to your concert last night, loved it, and it's like, that's cool. But when you actually get to face to see someone, it's nice to see their expression. For me anyway. But like, I remember this Christmas. Now, of course, obviously in 2017, I've heard of you because people were being like, hey, this band is from your neck of the woods. I'm like, again, PEI, Newfoundland. But it was Christmas time, and Instagram had suggested a few songs for me. And I was like, cool, like I know these artists. And then like the East Pointers came up, and I think it was like Winter Green. Now, you know, in my mind, I like it as a Christmas tune. Maybe necessarily like, you know, maybe not what you were going for, but that's what I thought of it as. But it's funny because that's where I was like, okay, I like this one, and I like Stronger Than You Know. So that was the other one that I really liked. But like, I remember saying, like, when I first downloaded these songs, I'm like, man, this has like kind of like a Celtic vibe. I even showed it to my dad, and my dad's really picky with his music. And he was kind of like, yeah, they're all right. And I'm like, if you get a "yeah, you're all right" from Willie Tobin, you're good. But
well, that's good to know.
Yeah, but like the other side of it too, and I did my prior research to this, is we actually had Emma Watkins on. Or is it
way.
Like
cool.
From the Wiggles.
Yeah, of course.
And she had mentioned, because they were touring Canada at the time, she was talking about how Edmonton, tied all back into the Junos, was more or less like really cold. I was like, go get a winter jacket, you're gonna need it. She's like, what's a winter jacket? I'm like, we'll talk about it off camera. But like, she had mentioned that she had performed with you guys, and I thought that was like a big compliment, because, you know, at first when you have someone like herself mention a PEI band, or like just any band in Canada in general, and like she wasn't struggling with the name at all, she like was listening, like telling the names, and I was just like, oh, I was like, that must be like a UK band that I've never heard of. And I was like, oh wait, I have heard of these people. I'm like, wait, you got to be on stage with him and him? But in the other aspect, I'm like, wait, they got to be on stage with Emma, and then I was just like, that's kind of a cool experience. But like, do you remember that? And like, how was the whole realm?
Yeah, Emma's a good friend of ours. She's I mean, she was just on PEI not too long ago for a little visit. But I'm just trying to think of how that all came about. I went to Australia, like I say, before the East Pointers formed. I was on a tour in Australia with. I'm just trying to think who's actually. I think I was with Matt Anderson at the time. Anyway, but I worked with an Australian label, and they were the same label as the Wiggles, and the Wiggles were doing a duets album, and they wanted something from the East Coast of Canada, and the guy who represents like whatever Basil is his name, really great guy. He said, "Oh, you should check out this artist from the East Coast of Canada. He's on our label," and sure enough, they got in touch with me to do the Squid Jigging Graham, which is where they went to film, obviously, in Newfoundland.
Nice, yeah.
And then, but I never actually met them at the time. So I just kind of did the song with them and chatted with them online. And then when we went back to Australia, probably a year later, with the East Pointers, they came out to our show. And then it was just like kind of like a match made in heaven. I don't know. We just, got to be really good friends with, that was probably back in like 2016 or 2017 with Anthony and Emma and Lockie and Simon. And they asked us to do some shows with them. So we kind of backed them up on their like big arena shows, which was such a hoot because we were just in those towns at the same time. And then we just kind of got to know them really well. Like we went to their houses many times and, just really great people and did lots of collaboration with them. And then Emma came to a festival in Australia and was up on stage with us like, I don't know, maybe 10 times and came to a few other shows, her and her partner, Ollie. But just great people that you can just tell, like, I love them because they work so hard and it's like they're successful because they work so hard and they love what they do. They love people and they, there's just no, they're just
no
real
phoniness. I guess.
No phoniness. Yeah. They just work hard and they respect like what we do. We respect what they do, and it just was like it's so fun and different. Like I know the last time that we saw them, well, and like I say, Emma was on PEI not long ago, but before that, we hadn't seen them since like we were actually on tour in Australia whenever COVID hit. So we were in the studio in the Wiggles like headquarters probably just a few days before that, filming a segment for Anthony. He's a crazy in a good way, just like full of energy. And he just was like, "Oh, do you guys want to come and do this with us?" And we're like, "Yeah, sure." And we hop in. I haven't heard the song before, but he's like, "Okay, I'm going to play the song. We'll hit the record button." And you're like, "Okay." And then 10 minutes later, you're in front of the camera singing the song with like sheep and animals and all these things in the room. And anyways, it's just such a fun thing to be a part of. And
when you were on tour with them or when they were forming back up kind of in that role, did they kind of tell you to pick a color to wear? Was it almost like, hey, I'm the yellow Wiggle, you be green?
I wish that they asked us to pick our colors, but no, they didn't. I guess we were too much in the back.
I would love to see that.
Yeah, but it was crazy because they would play, a show at 9 a.m. and have like 15,000 people. And then they play another show that day at 12 o'clock, another 15,000. And then another show at 5 o'clock with another 15,000 people. So literally like 45,000 people roll through, the kids roll through in one day. So the amount of energy and excitement when they come out on stage is just like my cheeks hurt. Like all of us, like we're looking at each other, like laughing so hard because the kids are losing it and their show is so funny and just like it's incredible. It's amazing. So great people.
Like I think in a weird way, like because I know Emma took kind of a break from the Wiggles and like she was on the rise, and I think she still does her own thing as well with Emma. But like I do like this is another part of the thing that I do like about having people on and generally having conversations with them. It's just like she did mention, it's great to do that in front of kids. It's great to entertain them, but like behind the scenes, it's like, who's amping you up? Like who's kind of keeping you in check? And then she did mention like, it just comes a time where I think when she just said like she had to take a break, and COVID was in a way, it was a perfect example for her to take a break because she got to spend time home when she realized how much she kind of missed home. But like, do you find that at times too with like just in general with performing, like, because I kind of relate it to like a Great Big Sea when you're like a band that people expect the energy, people expect you to like pump them up, and then if you come out on stage and you're like, all right, like I'm not having the best of days, but I know that this is what they came to see. Like, how do you kind of keep yourself leveler in check from going over the rail?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that's a big part of entertaining, especially when you do play in a band that like people are there like, okay, I'm here to dance and have a good time and all that. But there's been many, because I'm not sure if you've ever been on tour or whatever, but you just driving in general, like, and I'm not complaining about going on tour, but like it's an exhausting process. And I think after COVID and then touring again, you're kind of like, whoa, I'm at of practice, like just flying, not sleeping well, no routines, like there's nothing, like, so you're just kind of generally exhausted all the time, whether you kind of realize it or not. You kind of run on adrenaline a lot. So but luckily I found you just hop on stage, and because you love what you do, you're just like, everything kind of goes out the window for that like hour and a half or 2 hours or whatever. And everything else, like, you load in, sound check, pack up. Like there's a lot of great moments to the day, but there's also a lot of times where it's just like, I know, just being exhausted. So I think trying to keep and I know I've talked to Emma about this actually, trying to keep your health in check and like establishing some sort of routine for your body. Because like you say, it can go off the rails for sure, and it's easy. Have a couple beers every night and stay up late, and you can really, and you can see it in some performers, like entertainers, like you can just see the years of wear and tear on their body.
Speaking of like kind of the mental side of things, you recently had lost a band member in Koady. It's roughly about like a year and so many months, like 2 or 3 months now. Like how hard was that? Like, number one, to handle the loss, but then to figure out like, okay, what do we do? Because obviously I don't think anyone would fault you or you, like the remaining members, of saying like, hey, we need a break. This is big. Like, we didn't expect this. Or like, was it kind of like, man, we kind of need to keep doing this in his legacy and for us to kind of get through this? Because listen, if I was in that peace of mind, I don't think there's any wrong answer, but it's just like, for me, it's like once I start getting through a little bit of depression or something tragic happens, I'm like, all right, we can't just like stop. I need something to keep me going. Because as soon as I stop, it's over. Like if I gave up podcasting more because something happened, I'm not picking it back up.
No, it's been, it's like and I'm sure lots of people maybe listening, when you lose someone so close, it's unlike anything. Like you just can't. It's indescribable. It almost still doesn't feel real. That, like, I'll see a picture of Koady or just something about Code, like, and I'm just like, many days I'm just like, really, like in my head, it's like Code and I grew up together, played music together since we were kids, and then and we're always such great, like very, very close. And then obviously starting the band was like a whole other chapter of our lives in our adulthood. But and I think with Jake and I, when shortly after Code passed, it was like, for me, I thought, what an amazing thing that we did and had as the East Pointers. But I thought, like, we're not going to be these Pointers anymore. I think that's a chapter of our lives. That was like something that I thought in my head. And I know that but as time kind of went on, I think, you know, we had a whole EP or like a half of an album recorded with Koady, and Koady was so pumped about the songs. Like he was just like over the moon to get them out. And he was the one that was always like, okay, what do we need to do? Like we had just recently signed with Network, which is a great label, Canadian label, I guess back at the end of 2021 or so. And so Koady is really excited. He's like, okay, what can we do to get this record going and blah, blah, blah. And we were just writing all the time. Just we were just like, we can't not put these songs out. And we have so many other songs that we had written with Koady and little bits and bobs of things. And I think there came a point where Jake and I were like, we should keep going. Like we should keep this band alive. And I think that's what Koady would want. And it's not going to be the same. Obviously, it's just going to be Jake and I, and it's not going to be, there's going to be a huge hole, and there always will be. So it's tricky to even sort. And it's even at the beginning stages of that. Like we're not supposed to do our first show until the fall, but then this thing came up at the Junos where obviously being nominated, and then this show actually we're doing with the Fortunate Ones, like where our label asked us if we would play, and at first we said no, but then we were like maybe we should, this should be the first thing that we do, just a quick set, like kind of acoustic vibe. So so that's kind of where we're at currently. And then like we have some touring coming up in the fall, and some new singles and stuff coming out. So, but it's always like, I think the East Pointers will always be the three of us. Yeah. Like just not the three of us on stage. So that's our moving forward kind of, with Koady, because we've written so much with him and have grown so much. And really the band it revolves around Koady, because that's kind of why we started in the first place too. So, but yeah, it's bizarre and very surreal.
Yeah. No, you know what? I feel like, and again, like I was never in a band, I can't relate to it completely, but there are times when I'll look back and like, you know, like for example, like I'm looking at like Sugarland or Destiny's Child, and you'll go back and look at old videos. And like I really liked when Sugarland came out with their, I can't remember the first song right now, but I remember there was 3 of them. And that's how I always remembered, is 3 of them, like regardless of what happened with the 3, like if there was a falling out or whatever, it's just like that's where my mind goes. And same with Destiny's Child, like Say My Name. It's like there are 4 of you in that video, then it became 3, and then all 3 of you decided to do it. But it's like Destiny's Child to me is always 4. So I get it.
And I want people to always think that the East Pointers is the 3 of us. Like I don't want. So that's a good point. I never thought of that. So it's and I think anyone who knows the band will know, like, you know, what the 3 of us, and it was always special with the 3 of us. And it would never be anybody else. So it's
well, I think like an equivalent to that, like, is, you know, like in the sense of, and I don't want to ruffle feathers because I know there's probably people that like both sides of it, but like I grew up liking Blink-182, like Tom, you know, Mark and Travis. And then when Tom goes his own way, like, I followed Angels and Airwaves. Like, I'm not going to lie. But then, like, they bring in another guy. I think it was, like, Matt. But I'm just like, I like a few of your songs, but you're not like what I came to see. But I'm not like, I'm not basically like saying, like, you're a piece of shit. It's like, it is what it is. But it's just, there are people out there like, man, without Tom, it's not Blink. And, you know, you can kind of do that, but I think the other side of it is with, like, for your sake with the East Pointers, it's like, continue it on. There's still a fan base that's going to be there, like, and, you know, yes, he's not there, but they know, like, essentially, like, in spirit he's there, or they're doing it not because they're like, well, we're just continuing on without him, like, screw him. Like, no, they're continuing on because they felt like they needed to, and he's always there. Like, I would think it'd be interesting. Like, I don't know how long you can keep it going, but it would be cool if, like, when you do a grand stage concert or when you do any concert, just have a flashlight or like a light on just an empty, like, mic or something, and then people just, like, you know, even for a younger generation, I find, like, they just, like, sometimes you go see a band and they're like, why are they doing that? I'm like, oh, because one of their bandmates died and that's kind of their legacy. And then that person then goes later and looks them up and finds out the whole history of it, right? So it'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. I think there'd be something that would happen. I think, I don't know what it would be, but like I say, like it's, and I know some people have actually said like, oh, who are you going to get to replace Koady? And it's just like, you can't even, like, I couldn't imagine having someone else on stage. It's just not, anyway.
It's kind of, you know what, like next top, but it's kind of like when, you know, someone, like, I guess in our case, we did have a mother who lost their daughter like a couple of years ago. And it's almost like, you don't want to be disrespectful about it, but it's almost like, okay, like, how are you going to fill that void? It's like, you don't fill the void. You find something that you can essentially kind of comfort yourself with, but it's never gone. Like we still see, like, she shares images of her as many times as she can. She still kind of says like, happy birthday. And like, I know there are probably people out there like, why? Like, what are you doing? She's not here. It's like, yeah, but up here, she's never left. So like, and I feel like that's the same thing. Like if someone's coming up to you and be like, hey, you got to replace him. It's like, no, he doesn't. He's still there in some capacity. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Like I believe that, you know, and this is probably like the real first time that I've lost someone so near and dear to me, I think. And so it's, it's a process, and grief is, everyone deals with it differently. And, and everyone just moves at their own pace, and to, like you say, be respectful of whoever lost someone, like the way that they're dealing with is there's no right or wrong way to go about that, obviously.
So I want to ask you, because again, like I feel like we're really close in age. Like you're about 5 years young or older than me. So I guess in the kind of a fun aspect here is like, I'm 31, you're 36.
Yeah.
Like, can you tell me what future Brian can expect in like the next 5 years? Is there like, you know, because when I turn 30, and I've got friends that are still like 25, 26, 27, and I know when they turn 30, they're going to be like coming to me and be like, man, like, it feels like my whole life is over. I'd be like, I understand it may last a couple of months, but just remember, like, you just turned 30. So relax. Like, I still think I'm 30, not 31. But like, but what advice do you have for me?
Well, I'm not sure where you're at in life. Do you have any kids?
No
kids. Okay. So the biggest difference, I guess, from your age to my age is I had my first child when I was 32.
Okay.
And then I had my second child when I was 35. So I have 2 kids, and life is completely different than when I didn't have kids. And I know everyone said, oh, when you have kids, your life's going to change. It's good. You're going to wonder what you did. What you've done with your life before you had kids. And I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm sure it's not going to be that different. And I'll keep doing what I'm doing and blah, blah, blah. But it's the most, it's the most special thing ever, having children. It's the most difficult and the most incredible thing at the same time. It's so that's the biggest thing for me, is realizing that it's not all about me. It's like everything is about like my children and obviously my wife and my family, and then obviously you have to do what you love. Obviously you have to keep doing. And I think that my wife and I have balanced the, like, ensuring that each of us have enough time for what fulfills us and makes us happy. And then, doing what's best for your kids. And then just, I would say I've gotten probably more mature, but who knows? I don't know. But, but just, don't fret. Like, I think as a 30-year-old or 31-year-old, I remember thinking that I was old when I was 31, and now that I'm 36, I'm like, I still think I'm old, but I'm sure when I'm 41, I'll be like, oh, I wish I was 36 or whatever. Like,
okay, that sounds more promising. Okay, I like that answer.
And I think just another thing too, maybe as I get older, is taking better care of my mental health, my body. I was always fairly good at that. I feel like since my mid 20s, I've had a few things that happened that I was like, okay, I gotta take care of my mind and my body. And so yeah, I've been fairly consistent as far as I can, as much as I can. So, but even just more as I grow older, just that, taking care of, because your body is like they said, your body is your temple, and I don't want to be like a crappy old piece of, whenever I get to be 50.
That's fair. I find, like, going through the whole mental side of it, it's like I look at some things that I did in my 20s. Now, I wasn't crazy in my 20s. Like, I was pretty moderate, or maybe people be like, you were boring. But like, there are certain things I look back at now as like 30, and I'm like, how did I do that in university? Like, how did I function like that? Like, how did I look at a paper and it's like, yeah, it's this paper's due Friday. I'm like, starting at Monday. And I'm like, okay. And then you'd be at Friday night where it's like deadline is 12 o'clock and you'd have it submitted by, like, I wasn't like 12 in the dot, but it'd be like 11:30. And around 11 o'clock, I'd be like, yeah, I'm just going to go down to the store and, like, get a pack of like Gushers or Skittles just to keep me going. And I'm like, at 30, I'm like, I'd have that paper like done within Tuesday or Wednesday, because I'd have it spaced out, and I'd be like, good, you're on the ball, right? And I say that knowing that I probably wouldn't. I'd probably stay Thursday night and be like, all right, pack of Skittles, Mountain Dew, and let's start. And then I'd be like emailing a teacher and be like, this ain't going to be done by 12.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, I gave you a week. I'd be like, you understand how my week works.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I was the same when I was in university. It was I don't know how I even got anything done from between partying and like eating, like you say, pack of Skittles and Mountain Dew.
Yeah, just like, look, I'm like drinking I'm drinking a Gatorade here. Like, I'm sure people are like, what shouldn't that be water? I'm like, don't worry, I got water in the back, but I just need an energy drink. Why?
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay. I just felt like
it's just some extra sugar.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I hear you. Same. And I look back at my younger years and think, oh my God, my body's, how did I even survive? But I think your body adjusts as you start treating it better. You can always start whenever.
I want to clue it up with a little bit of a fun aspect of the game here. We call it random questions.
Okay.
Completely random. If you don't like it, you can pass, or you can be like, shut up, Tobin, you answer it. And then I'll be like, all right, fine, put me on the spot. Okay. Do you remember, like, because this one's actually a pretty good random one. But it's like, do you remember your first kind of dad moment where it's like, okay, like, this is like, because everyone's like, yeah, I got a child, I'm a dad now, but like your first actual dad moment where maybe you were kind of worried about a child, or you're kind of like, man, this is totally like, some people make dad jokes or dad humor where it's like, yeah, he's a total dad. Do you remember like the first time that you felt like a dad?
Oh God, so many times I don't even know where to start. I'm not sure the first time, maybe even just after my son was born. I think it was like, what the fuck? Like, this like kid just came out of my like. You're just like, you feel like an actual animal. Like, I think that was probably the first moment of like, we had our baby at home actually, and I remember just being like, what, completely like, what the hell? Like, you just, how much we're like out of touch, I guess, maybe. I'm just speaking for myself, how much I'm out of touch with like what, like just being like a human being that reproduces like other humans, like, and you have those moments. I think sometimes I'm just like, I can't believe I have like these kids come from, like, I'll say my wife sometimes, like, but that I think when my son was born, that was one of the first, like, as soon as he was born, was like, catching him being like, what the hell? Like, this is wild. Like,
It's like, all of a sudden, it's like, I'm responsible for this. Okay.
And that's the other thing where you're like, okay, I got to keep, like, not me, my wife more so, but like, you got to keep this human alive.
It's just interesting because when you actually think of it, like, now I haven't been in the shoes, but I'm just like, because when you get older, you're like, man, like, look at the lessons you learned from your parents, or like what they taught you, and then it's like, man, like, you think they have it all figured out, but they're pretty much winging it. And then you get older, you're winging it, but then they grow up and tell you, hopefully, like, hey, like, you taught me so much stuff, and then you're like, yeah, that's right. I taught you a lot. And then when like they leave the room, they're like, fuck, like, yes, success. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't mess this one up.
Yeah.
The other two, on the other hand, like that's how
Yeah.
I feel with my family. I've got 2 older brothers, and they
Okay.
always say like the oldest one is like cradled, you know, and
Yeah.
the second one it's like, all right, we kind of learned our mistakes. We're gonna and then the third one's almost like, buddy, we've been here before. You go do what you want. And it's like that's kind of how I felt. Like, you know, my nan was getting older, but like at the same time, it's like you look at old pictures of my nan with my other 2 brothers, she's like holding them tight, like don't drop them. With me, she's kind of like, listen, if he falls, it's okay. You got 2 others.
Yeah. No, I can totally relate because I'm the youngest of 6 actually. So my sister has all these stories about how my mom and dad wouldn't let her do this and that, and so many stories. And then, you know, the next one comes, and then by the time number 6 comes, like they're just like, whatever. Like, I don't remember them telling me to do anything like all through high school and stuff. But also, I think there's a certain aspect, like you could probably relate to, like as the youngest, like because there's no hard rules, you don't have a desire to break them. So like I was probably all my siblings are pretty great, and there's not anyone that's. But I would say maybe I could have been the most laid back, but I even noticed that with my daughter, she's so much more laid back than my son, because I think we were all like, was your first child, you're just like, oh my God, like protect them and do this and that, and then the second one comes and you're just like, oh okay, whatever. She's over there eating seaweed on the beach, but like she's fine. It's not going to kill her.
I got 2 more random ones for you. So the other random one we have is, do you remember your most embarrassing moment on stage?
Oof. Most embarrassing moment on stage. Oh, there must be. Oh, I have one that was fairly embarrassing. That I remember once we were driving from, embarrassing, but and stupid. So like we were driving from Scotland.
Best combo.
Yeah. We were driving from Scotland to England, and it was a really big drive that day, I remember. And I drove the whole time. It was like an 8-hour drive. So we were going to northeast Scotland. And just exhausted and get on stage. Didn't really realize, like, I'm not sure if you've been, but in Scotland and England, it's like kind of like somewhat like Canada and the US. It's kind of like, you know, in a way, like just the rivalry, or like the Scotland's like the small, you know, England bunch of like whatever posh people were like Scottish, you know, blah blah blah. So they don't like, if like basically what I did is I said good evening, like I referred to being in England when we were actually in northern Scotland, and everyone looked like, did he just say, like,
did he just say that we're in England?
And there were people genuinely upset that I can't remember how I said it, but I remember the guys looking at me like, did you just fuck say that we're in England when we're in Scotland? And I was like, oh my God, I had a total, like, you know, moment on, like, and I just try to explain, like, you know, I drove for 8 hours and I'm exhausted. I didn't mean to say that. Anyways, that's one that comes to mind. But and to this day, we've actually been back to that venue. They've brought it up every time we've gone back.
Of course. It's like, you know, it's like walking into, like, I guess it's like, I don't know everything about, say, their football, but it's like, you know, because I remember at Carleton, there's obviously different branches of people that come in from all over the world. I remember soccer's really big, and well, we call it soccer. They have it football, but like, you know, you go up to someone's like, you going for Man U, Chelsea, or Liverpool? It's like, dude, I don't care. And they're like, they get like, so like, and I'm just like, wait, what did I say? Like, I'm trying to be more respectful by saying I don't care than give you a wrong answer. But I guess it's the same as, you know, listen, we're Canadian, and like, I guess like we're super friendly at points, but like if someone comes up to me and they're like, man, I don't care who wins, Toronto or Montreal. I'm like, wait, what? You don't care who wins? Like, who do you go for? Like, well, it's like, I really like the Leafs, but I like Carey Price. I'm like, you know what? That's fair. That's fine. But if you're like, I like Toronto, but I will root for Montreal in the playoffs. I'm like, no, like that.
No, it's the same. Yeah, exact same thing.
So the last one they have here for a random question. This one's okay, I guess. What's a song that you love to perform that isn't one of your own? Like it can be by yourself, but like something that you're like, man, love doing this song. No matter how many times I do it, I'll just keep coming back to it.
Yeah, that's not my own. There's definitely a few out there. We used to do a cover of Heroes by David Bowie. That was kind of one that I always enjoy doing. And if I'm like just grabbing the guitar, I that's kind of a go-to. Another one that kind of comes to mind, which people would probably laugh at, is Wonderwall by Oasis.
You know what? That's one of my favorites to do. I don't even perform, but it's just like I'll like, even when I'm like doing voice messages with my friends, I will try my best to sing Wonderwall, but then they'll be like, man, like don't even try. I'm like, okay, but I know that I can at least try that one.
Yeah.
For like a Backstreet Boys, As Long As You Love Me, or I Want It That Way. I will try my best, but listen, if someone's like, man, get up on stage with Nick Carter and sing it, I'm like, listen. Behind the scenes, sure, but not on stage.
Not on stage. But and there was also a really cool version that Ryan Adams did, kind of like just a chill version of that Wonderwall song. I don't know when it was, but I just always really loved that song as a kid. And then on the guitar, it's just like the chord, like anyways, Noel, is it Noel Gallagher?
Yeah,
that he wrote it, and good on him.
Yeah. Impressive. Well, you know what? Like, speaking of like just like covers, like it's funny because like I know when I was in, so I went to Algonquin for radio, and you hear a lot of the same music because it's on like the station, but then they have like an Ottawa local station that you have to promote, like Canadian acts or Ottawa. And at first, when I first started there, I did not like that. Like, I just like as if I'm going to walk in as a new Flanner, like, we're changing it. It's like, no, I was like, all right, whatever. But like, I discovered Cale Matson from that station.
Oh, yeah.
And Cale had, I think Drake's song at the time was Hotline Bling.
Yeah,
and like it was, I'd hop over to the next station. You'd hear it all the time. And then I'm like, ask anyone, I think, in radio, like when people are like, man, I love this new song. It's like, yeah, I've already heard it 50 times. Like, and it's only been out for a day. But I like Cale Masson's Hotline Bling. It just had a little bit more raw emotion.
Yeah, like, cool. I don't know if I've heard that. I'll check it out.
Because like Drake's version is more like a little bit pop, a little bit like more or less upbeat, but like it's supposed to be because it's Drake. It's kind of sad. It's supposed to be sad, where it's like ever since you left the city. But like Cale's version is like very like, I guess, emotional, where it's like you feel the rawness of like you left the city. Like you're going around dating other people. You're not the same person. And I'm like, man, I feel more Cale's like, this is not good. Where in Drake's, it's almost like, man, like she left, but let's dance. And I'm just still like, no, I don't want to. I'm sad.
I'll have to check that out. I will.
That's going to do it for this episode of Tobin Tonight. Our thanks to Tim from the East Pointers for coming on to the show. Remember, you can find past, present, and future episodes on TobinTonight.com, Spotify, and iTunes. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and leave a comment or two. For Tobin and myself, this is Jacob saying thank you for listening, and